Welcome to the RotoWire Wild Card Weekend Preview. I'm Jim Coventry, excited to talk football with you. Yes, the fantasy regular season is over, but we all know we're going to be playing some fantasy postseason, maybe a little bit of DFS, maybe some prop betting. And if you just love football, we're just going to talk about these games, and I'll give you a Super Bowl prediction at the end of course. And as we look through this whole slate of playoff opponents, I have been saying this for weeks. Here's the deal. This is a group of flawed teams. And I always said the way the bracket would shake out, which opponents could take advantage of other teams' weaknesses, that was going to be a very critical point in drawing out who is going to go to the Super Bowl. Of course, we have no idea because any Sunday, any team can win, and we know how this all goes. Last year, I got roasted for predicting an early exit for the Lions. Now, I thought they'd lose in the first round. They lost in the second, definitely didn't make it to the NFC Championship. But again, these are tough predictions to make because the population is, firmly in the camp of a number of teams. And as I go through these games, you're going to understand why incredibly I picked a number, I'm not going to say how many, a number of teams that are lower seeded to come out with the win here. You're going to be surprised. So hang on and we'll go through to this. But I'm opening the slate. We have a couple Saturday games, Rams at Panthers, Packers at Bears in the evening. That's my phone. On Saturday, if you have SiriusXM Fantasy Channel 87, I will be on from 2 to 5. It'll overlap the game. I know you're going to watch the game for that last half hour. That's no problem. But we'll preview all these games with Mario Puig on SiriusXM Fantasy again on Saturday. And that said, Sunday evening after the late afternoon game, I'll be back right here and I'll go over the recap and takeaways of, at that point, the first 4 playoff games. All right, let's get into things here. So we're no particular order of games here at this point, but maybe we'll just go in the order they're being played. Let's start with the Rams game. The Rams play the Panthers. And if you remember, they played not too long ago. And we remember the Panthers came out with the win in that game. And obviously we were stunned. Understand this. Matthew Stafford turned the ball over 3 times, couple of interceptions, a fumble. The second half was a heavy rainstorm. The mistakes the Rams made, it was just one of those days. It wasn't a great Panthers defense figuring out Sean McVay, figuring out Matthew Stafford. It was just one of those days, and they happened. And bad news for the Panthers is that they won that game, because the Rams will not take them lightly now. That one you can almost guarantee, not taking them lightly. But here's the important thing. In that game, in the third quarter, Carolina possessed the ball for about 13 of the 15 minutes. They put the squeeze on the Rams. And this is the critical point. For much of the season, you heard me talking about that Carolina rushing attack. The offensive line, they had injuries. It never mattered. They were run blocking at an elite level. The tight ends were chipping in. The backup linemen were chipping in. And then all of a sudden, last 4 weeks or so, all of a sudden that run blocking has really slid. Now, defenses have made adjustments to what the Panthers were doing. I still don't believe defenses respect Bryce Young. So I think teams went in with a little more of an aggressive attack to stop the run and to force Bryce Young to beat them, which I always think is a wise idea. I know a lot of people love Bryce Young, but is what it is. He had a few games where he was chasing points and he got over 200 yards. But he was only over 206 yards 3 times all season. That's not very aggressive with the passing numbers. So that's it. Rico Dowdle, we remember way back, like week 5-ish, we had those 2 games of 230 scrimmage yards. Those days are long gone. And so the Rams are not a great run defense, but they're a good enough run defense. They've seen this team before. As I mentioned, the Panthers are not run blocking it quite the way they did earlier in the season. So I don't think Carolina has that ability to go in and just grind down. And remember, the turnovers by Stafford were a huge point in that game. To expect that to happen again, very unlikely. So that said, if the Panthers fall way behind, if you're playing DFS, do take a look at Bryce Young. He had a couple massive games when game script worked that way. And I kind of feel like this game is going to go that way. The Rams are 10-point favorites on the road in a playoff game. 10-point favorites. We rarely see that level of a point spread, but it's justified. It is justified. Devontae Adams, as this recording is Wednesday about 10:30 Eastern, Devontae Adams is expected to be fine for this game. They wanted to make sure he was all the way healthy, didn't bother putting him out there, knowing the playoffs were coming. And this Rams offense, and I know they did not look good the last weeks, but Adams didn't play. There's that, okay? Adams didn't play those last 2 games, and that means a lot because defenses, what do? The Rams are trotting out 3 tight ends frequently, and then when they don't, you get Adams and Nakua out there. Who do you cover? Who do you stop? Can you stop them even if you focused on them? And the answer is probably no. And the Rams are not a good run defense. So Kyron Williams and Blake Corum probably get theirs. This should be a balanced attack. The Rams should have very, very little trouble moving the football. So overall, this is a great, great opportunity for the Rams to come in and to take care of business. So that said, I do think that they win this game pretty easily. I think there's some garbage time for the Panthers. I go 34-20. If you're nervous about the garbage time closing it closer, you may take an alternate line and parlay it with something else. There certainly is merit to do that because, again, these games often come down. There's a late touchdown, all of a sudden close it to 6. So you may consider an alternate line, again, if you're putting in with other points in a parlay. But I do think the Rams laying 10, I think it's a very solid bet here. And I think Bryce Young, although he's had the garbage time games, the Rams pass rush can step up. We saw him step up in the playoffs last year. So if that happens, that may all of a sudden become pick 6, fumble 6, sack fumble. So all those things are in play here. But I really think this is a great, great opening game for the Los Angeles Rams. And they had the cake draw of the 8-9 Carolina Panthers. All right, next we are going to talk some Green Bay Packers at Chicago Bears. And so we go back to a little history lesson, right? Well, the history lesson for that game, the first 2 games, was fairly simple. It was basically that we saw that the Packers won the first game, and then the second game was weird. So that second game, remember, that was the one where Jordan Love got knocked out of that game early with a concussion. First quarter, he was knocked out. Josh Jacobs had been really scuffling through that knee injury. And it wasn't even certain he was going to play. He played a bit, and then he fumbled, and then they kind of benched him. And then remember, the Packers still with Malik Willis, they pretty much had that game won. And then the Bears, they bungle the 2-minute warning thing, but they make the field goal, and then they need an onside kick. What is that, an 8% chance? Well, they get the onside kick. They score in overtime, and they win. And credit to the Bears. The Bears earned that win. They took a win. The Packers bungled it away. Their fault. Teams lose games. That happens. But that said, I expect Josh Jacobs to be significantly healthier. It was a bruise. It was a bruise he was dealing with. It was not a structural issue. So he's going to be fine. Jordan Love did really well. Threw 3 touchdowns in the first meeting between the Bears and the Packers. That was like 5 weeks ago. These games were late in the season, and the Packers won that game by a touchdown. I don't think the home field advantage means much here. And Chicago, I live here. We're not expecting anything like bad weather. It's going to be warm here. So that's not going to be an issue there. But both teams are obviously prepared for weather if there was, but we don't expect that right now. So the Bears are going to be a really good team going forward. I'm very excited what Ben Johnson's done. I think the defense needs some help. The coach is good, Dennis Allen. I think they need a good draft, maybe a little free agency boost. They need a little help, especially that interior defensive line. So all that said, the Packers, they needed last week, as they treated as a bye week. They rested players. And that's going to be that's a huge rest advantage for them. So I think that is going to be really important here. Rome Odunze has a foot issue. He had some limited practice before week 18. We'll see what happens with that. But all that said, the Packers have shown they can slow the Bears rushing attack out a bit, and that's going to make it difficult. Because as much as I think Caleb Williams has shown a lot of improvement this year, I think there is a lot of inconsistency to his game. I think that he'll miss a number of throws by not taking them. There'll be a play open. He won't often see it. and then he'll move on. And sometimes he can break contain, and sometimes he can make a big play, and he's exciting to watch. I just am baffled on how they just ignore DJ Moore so many weeks. Baffled. I and not this isn't sour grapes. I was wrong on him for fantasy this year. It's like DJ Moore's a legit superstar. The man has 3 22-point fantasy games in the last 6 weeks. So how many players have done that all year? But then he piggybacks that with like a game with less than 2. They don't throw him the ball. So that said, I just don't get it. And we'll see. But I think the Packers overall defensively can do enough to give the Bears a little bit of an issue. On the other side, I just don't think the Bears defensively are equipped to deal with the versatility that the Packers bring. The Packers don't have to focus on any one player. Christian Watson's been really coming on, and he torched the Bears up for, 86 yards and a couple touchdowns in that first meeting. Even with Malik Willis, that was a Ravens game, but he played well there. So I think having Christian Watson healthy helps. Jaden Reed certainly gets involved a bit. Dante Wicks probably is a fourth receiver. They probably won't need him much, but of course Romeo Doubs as the outside receiver. They're going to, just be able to utilize him in red zone role, possession role, but they got weapons and they're versatile enough to move. Wicks will play a little bit, like I said earlier. Hopefully he doesn't drop an onside kick or something like that. But all that said, Josh Jacobs should be fine here. This is a game where he can get going. I don't think he has a massive game, but he seems to always find the end zone in the Packers games when they're able to put points on the board. I think Jacobs is a good bet for a touchdown here. I like him in DFS this week, but I think the balance attack, the great coaching, Matt LaFleur is a great coach and he's very good at scheming players open, and the Bears defense, they really just don't have the personnel to deal with it. And they don't have enough flexibility from a schematic standpoint to deal with it. And there are games if the Bears decide to try to send some pressure, Jacobs will be used as a receiver out of the backfield. If that happens, when teams don't send that pressure, they don't function Jacobs that way. But I do think the Bears have had a great season. But I think overall, I think the Packers are the better team here. So I do think that, again, that loss in Chicago, Packers lost, the Bears won, Bears all the credit in the world. But that scenario to get there didn't look like the better team to me. And I think that's going to bear out here. I do think the Packers win this one. I go 26-23. I do think there are some points scored here. Packers are 1.5 point favorites on the road. I do like laying that spread on that game. We go to the Sunday games. This one is going to be one we are all excited to see. We are going to see some Buffalo Bills at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Very, very exciting first round matchup. When I was before I predicted out the playoffs, and I told you at the beginning of the show, I said very simply that we were going to have to see how the styles make fights. We're going to have to see how the playoff bracket shook out. I was completely ready to say, nope, this isn't the Bills' year. The Bills are probably going to be one and done. But let's talk through this game and see if that's what's really going to happen. Jaguars have been wonderful. Liam Cohen has done an outstanding job. This team caught fire in the second half of the season. They're very solid defensively. The pass rush is inconsistent. Josh Hines-Allen really did come on in the second half, though, looking like a game wrecker. But the pass rush still is a bit on the inconsistent side. The cornerbacks, they play a good zone concept. There's no real dominance on the back end. Now, I guess I'm probably going too all over the board on Jacksonville, but that said, run defense is solid. They're a very good team, a very well-coached team. The run game, I love Travis Etienne, but the running game is not sustaining. The run blocking is not to the level it needs to be. Etienne sometimes has to make his own magic, and he's only able to do so much of that. So how do these teams match up? So let's start with that Jaguars offense. Buffalo's not a good defense. When they play an elite offense, the offense can move the ball up and down the field on them. I will say this. The offensive line for the Jaguars, if they are in obvious passing situations, I am very concerned about their pass protection. And the Bills, they still do have a rotation of pass rushers. They seem to be healthy enough right now. And I do think even though the defense overall has played poorly, I do believe that Sean McDermott is a good enough coach, and I think he can throw enough confusing looks to put Trevor Lawrence in a couple of those situations where we might see the Trevor Lawrence who has not really made mistakes in the last 6 weeks, but I think we can see that crop up again. And look, this is a hot streak for Trevor Lawrence. Now, some will believe he turned the corner and he's going to be a superstar forever. He's had hot streaks in the past. This is a playoff stage. This is a big game stage. And Buffalo, they may not have won anything, but they have a lot of playoff experience. And their coach has a lot of playoff experience. And I think that matters here. I think defensively, again, I don't think the run game sustains. And I think that is going to be a problem. Jacoby Myers should be just fine there. He's a great middle of the field option. He lines up on the perimeter a lot. Parker Washington's been playing well. But I think Buffalo, with their zone concepts and rotating players, and again, using their pressure, I think the Jaguars are going to have a bit of a hiccup on offense here. So I'll get to their point total a little bit later. The Buffalo side. Again, Jaguars been a very good defense. And I've worried for 2 years about the Bills because they lack outside receivers who can consistently win. And that's a problem because in the playoffs, your weaknesses get exposed. Where are the Jaguars weakest on defense? The middle of the field. And I believe that Khalil Shakir, his snap share is not where it needs to be most weeks. And Dalton Kincaid's been playing about 33% of the snaps. That's not good. But I do know this. The playoffs are offering hyper-specific game plans because you're coaching for your playoff life. And I do believe that when the Bills study the film, they're going to see we need to pound the middle of the field. So I do think Shakir and Dalton Kincaid are big, big plays here. And then there's the Josh Allen factor. And I haven't gotten to James Cook yet. The Josh Allen factor. We've seen it. Josh Allen has put this team on his back in the playoffs, in the regular season. When does he come up short in the playoffs? Usually it's when a dude named Patrick Mahomes outplays him. Another legendary quarterback might beat him. I don't see that happening here. I think Josh Allen can put the cape on here. The foot injury, I'm going to assume it's fine. If it's not, then we got a problem. James Cook, not a great rushing matchup. But we know the Bills are not opposed to putting a 6th offensive lineman on the field and road grading. And James Cook's an excellent back. And the one thing, James Cook can run inside or outside. But against this Jacksonville defense, popping the ball to the outside, that is where your advantage lies. And Cook is very capable of a couple of big runs on the outside. I don't think Jacksonville has the type of defense that could really clamp down Josh Allen. I just don't see it happening. And so Jaguars have had a wonderful season. And again, I was all ready to rule the Bills out for the playoffs very quickly, saying, well, they're probably not going to win on the road. They're not a good team this year. I think they're able to take the Jaguars out here. And I have the prediction 27-23. The line in this game is Bills 1.5. So the books see the Bills as a slightly better team. And I think the Bills do win this by 4. So again, if I'm betting this one, yeah, I definitely do like that. Again, with props, DFS, Kincaid and Khalil Shakir. If you want to go the bargain basement there, DraftKings, Shakir's like 4,800. Kincaid's like 3,200. I think that's right about there. Yeah, I think you definitely want to take a look at them there. And I think you could, if you have money you want to spend up on Josh Allen, you could use that as your stack. You can stack all 3 of them. If you got to save money at quarterback, you could try the Bryce Young route. But, again, you will have some money to spend. So that's not a bad stack to go with. And, maybe run it back with Jacoby Myers because Jacoby Myers should be okay in this one as well. I assume that defenses are going to treat Brian Thomas as the number 1, even though they probably shouldn't. But I probably see that as the way that one goes. All right, we have got the 49ers up against the Philadelphia Eagles on the road. Very excited about this game. 49ers 12-5, the Eagles 11-6. The Eagles, I guess in some ways they were smart by resting their starters in week 18. It's a bye week for them. They took Devontae Smith did a few snaps, but basically they rested people. And now it may have been smart. Rest is important in the NFL. And I guess they had to it was hard to assume the Bears would lose. So had the Eagles won that game, their playoff seeding is very different. Now, maybe Green Bay was a worse matchup for him. But here we have this game. And we'll start with the 49ers side. On offense, the 49ers, I don't know if Ricky Pearsall will play. On and off with a knee all year. We'll see if he plays or not. But here's the deal. Vic Fangio's defense. The Eagles have an excellent defense, but they have some holes. Second cornerback is a big hole. Safety is not a strength. The goal of Fangio's defense is to limit explosives. They don't want to get beat with the big play, and they're consistent with that. They don't sell out to stop the run. With the style of defense they play, I think this is tailor-made for Kyle Shanahan, who schemes players open quickly. I think getting Kittle on the safeties and linebackers is a huge edge for the 49ers. I think the types of routes that Jawan Jennings runs, grinder routes, but he gets open on them. I think he's fine on those. And I don't think the Eagles put Quinyon Mitchell on him every play. If Pearsall plays, it's a massive advantage to the 49ers because Pearsall's very good. Pearsall's excellent at getting open fast. But then there's a McCaffrey factor. Oh my goodness, is McCaffrey, his running. Yeah, I get it. The running is not as efficient as it used to be. And left tackle Trent Williams has a hamstring issue. Don't know if he's going to play. But I still think the Shanahan passing attack, and I think weaponizing McCaffrey as a receivers have done all year. I think these are things that are going to be very little problem for moving the football. Brock Purdy, very good second reaction passer. I know a lot of people were like, well, Mac Jones better. Whatever, but Mac Jones, the problem is once he gets in pressure, he struggles to go to the next thing. Brock Purdy's been an ace at fixing a broken play, and that's why they like him so much in San Francisco. Purdy can run when he needs to run. He's very crafty in the pocket. And it's not like the Eagles have a dominant pass rush, but they have enough of one where if they get it, Purdy can work around that. I think the 49ers are not going to have any issue moving the football. And then we get to the Eagles side. 49ers are a terrible defense. And full stop. End. Terrible defense. They're bad against the run. They're bad against the pass. But they're playing a Philly offense. It's not been good all year. They've had a few good games. They've had a few good moments. But they've had some really good matchups. And they haven't been able to take advantage of them. Even when Lane Johnson, the right tackle, was healthy. He'll be back for this one. I remember that the Black Friday game against the Bears. There is no scenario where the Eagles have been able to run the ball down the Bears' throats all day long. I think the first 3 carries, Barkley had close to 20 yards. But then Kevin Patullo, I said it in the preseason. I said in the middle of the season, and I'm saying it now. He's out of his depth. He didn't have serious coaching experience. And I say by that, he wasn't calling plays. And what happens is when defenses have a plan for you or make adjustments, he just doesn't have the experience to figure out how to fix it. And he hasn't fixed it all year. So there's been no real improvement. Now, I know Kevin Patullo was taking on some advice from Nick Sirianni later in the season. They had a few moments of success. But how do I say that Saquon Barkley's going to have a good game here when he really hasn't had many of them all year? He had a big game against the Giants earlier in the season. He had a decent one down the stretch. But he hasn't been Barkley. And it's because the offensive line isn't what it was last year. The play design is not good. They don't set plays up to get the defense caught off guard. The coaching's terrible. Real problem. A.J. Brown's been great since week 7? And yeah, he might get his. But here's the thing. We're going to see Robert Saleh, the defensive coach of the 49ers. He understands that Jalen Hurts has a lot of struggles with zone. And they are going to put some serious zone content. They're going to drop some extra bodies. And Jalen Hurts struggles with that. And if you've watched the games this year, and I know he ran a little bit in week 17, I believe, Jalen Hurts doesn't want to run the ball anymore. You could tell. And there are runs where he could get 30 yards. And as soon as a defender is close to him, he slides. But he doesn't want to run the ball. It's become very apparent every week this year. Does not want to run it. And that takes away a huge element from their offense. It was like a catalyst for their offense. Hurts' running helped Barkley as a runner. It put defenses in a pickle because if they put too many players back, Hurts would just gash you for yardage. That's not happening. And I don't think the Eagles are a team that can just flip the switch. They haven't flipped the switch all year. Why do I think they could flip the switch now in a playoff game? And the answer is I don't. I love the Eagles. I want the Eagles to go far with the team they have because I want to enjoy watching the players they have. But that's what happens when you hire a coach that's in over his skis. And this is where it's going to become a problem. And so, end of the day, I have the Niners who are getting 3 points. Getting 3 points. I have them winning 29-23. I wish it wasn't this way, and I love the Niners too. I love all these teams. I'm a fan of all 32 teams. You know that. But that said, McCaffrey over 5.5 receptions, minus 108 at DraftKings. Love that. Brock Purdy over 1.5 passing touchdowns, minus 111. I love that. Kittle over 58 receiving yards. Love that at minus 112. Again, this team they really know how to hone in on those stars when they need them, which is a great thing. All right, we go next. We have the Sunday evening matchup, which is the Los Angeles Chargers against the New England Patriots. I'm excited for this one. Now, the 7 seed, the Chargers, the 2 seed, the Patriots. And in this game, the point spread, you've got 3.5 point favorites, the New England Patriots. Drake May, what do I say? What a wonderful season he's had. They did get their left tackle, Will Campbell, back in week 18. So their offensive line appears to be fully healthy. That's a positive. Travion Henderson has come on over, made a nice improvement over the course of the season when they used him more. Ramondre Stevenson's looked great. And all that said, Stephon Diggs, when they need him, which has been about 4 times this year, he'll have a big game. A lot of games they don't need him. His snaps are limited. It's fine. He's been really, really solid for them. This is not a good matchup for them. The Chargers defense. The Chargers are very good at everything. Their zone defense concepts are very good in limiting downfield passes. They're also very good at rallying the tackle on shorter completions. They are outstanding against the run. And as much as I like Stevenson and as much as I like Travion Henderson, the Chargers can overwhelm the run blocking of the New England Patriots. And I think the Chargers, our defense, is going to have a lot of success. And then I think we're going to find Drake May in a lot of obvious passing situations. And some might think that sounds like a great thing. And I don't want to throw shade on Drake May because he's an amazing quarterback. But I can't get away. They really have played nobody this year. They played the Bills twice. And the Bills, like I said, are a terrible defense. The Chargers, again, are a really, really good defense. They're very well coached. They'll be game plan specifically coached here. Drake May loves the downfield shots. Chargers really won't give those up frequently. And I don't see them giving them up here. This is funny. Mac Hollins on IR. Who cares, right? Well, Mac Hollins was playing a lot of snaps. He's a very good blocker. They were getting him more involved as a receiver. Love Kayshon Boutte as well. But the offense lose a lot of that blocking concept with Mac Hollins out. I think the Chargers defense is going to have a good deal of success slowing down the Patriots offense. Now, the other side of the ball. Milton Williams is back for the Patriots defense. That's a plus. They got back last week. Not sure about Robert Spillane's status. He's missed time. He's the middle linebacker, inside linebacker. So he's very good in run support. And I know the Chargers have a catastrophic offensive line to tackle. They've been playing third-string tackles. Been a real problem for them. I don't think New England has the level of pass rush that could take full advantage of the issues on the offensive line for the Chargers. I don't think the pass rush is anything close to dominant. I think it's inconsistent at best. And here's the deal. You got Christian Gonzalez and Jamel Dean at corner. They're physical corners. And I think the Chargers receivers are a little more finesse. And you'd think the physical guys can beat that. But I don't think in this, I think the game plan for the Chargers is going to be, and it was at some points with the line injuries, but then they didn't always follow. It's going to be very quick hitting. Keenan Allen doesn't play a ton of snaps, but Keenan Allen can get open quickly. We have seen Ladd McConkey struggle down the stretch, but Ladd McConkey is a very good matchup here. Arondé Gadsden has kind of fallen off the map a bit, although he did have a couple plays a couple games ago that were solid. And I do think he's a player they can get open fast. And I think outlet passes to Omarion Hampton are going to be big here. I think it's going to be a very quick out offense here. And I think the personnel setup for the Chargers will give them success. And don't forget, Justin Herbert, just like Drake May, will take off and run for significant yardage when it presents itself. Both of those quarterbacks have that massive edge there. Overall, the Chargers have that big defensive advantage, in my opinion. I think offensively, the styles make the fight. I don't think the Patriots setup is one that is going to give them a lot of issues. I think the Chargers, they're going to kick their share of field goals, of course, always the case. I have the Chargers winning 23-20 here. And so obviously I'm taking the 3.5 points here. People think I'm nuts. I get it for saying, how do the Chargers line up beat the Patriots? But I keep saying this whole playoffs was going to be styles make fights. And I think that is the biggest issue. And of course, I get to the most exciting game of the playoff slate. Yes, it's the Monday nighter. It's the Houston Texans, who for once are not playing on Saturday at 4:30. They're playing on Monday night. They're playing at the Pittsburgh Steelers. So all that said, Texans 3.5-point favorites on the road. Everybody wanted that 5 seed who was a wild card because you knew you were going to be playing the AFC North champion, which happened to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Poor Tyler Loop, by the way. Before I get into this guy, I'll point this out. Tyler Loop, the kicker for the Ravens. I said as soon as Isaiah Likely caught that pass to get them to the 27-yard line, Ravens have timeout. The Ravens had time on the clock. I said, you definitely want to try to get the ball closer. Now, if you were worried because Derrick Henry's fumbled a couple times here, I get it. So you roll out Lamar. If there's nothing there, he throws it out of bounds. It's not grounding. You see if he can get you something easy. I always thought, why are you going to line up for a 44-yard field goal? And I get it. They're kicking 55 these days. But Tyler Loop, rookie, this was a playoff game. I get it as a regular season. It was a playoff game. It was coming down to 1 second, one kick. 44 is not a chip shot. They could have gotten the ball closer. Now, would he miss if it was closer? I don't know. Maybe he would have missed it. And I get people being upset. Kicker's job to make the kick. He didn't make the kick. I get it. But I think the Ravens did him a disservice. They could have gotten that ball closer, or at least tried to. And if they tried and they didn't, that's fine. But they just said, all right, we're good at 44. Anyway, I want to get that out there. Texans at the Steelers. We have two offenses that are not very good. Houston, it's not a sustaining rushing attack. Woody Marks has shown flashes. Jar Jordan shown flashes. Nick Chubb, unfortunately, is at the end of the road. The offensive line, the Texans had a little better schedule in the second half of the season, so there are games the Texans' offensive line looked better. But it really isn't a good line. It's a well below average line, pass protection and run blocking. And C.J. Stroud has been a victim of that line. When teams can get pressure, it's a problem. And they did a very nice job in the Chargers game, that one that was on that Saturday afternoon, when they ran 2 plays early. They took shots over the top with defense focus on Nico Collins. They got Jaden Higgins over the top for one. Can't remember who got the second long touchdown on that one, but very well schemed up. Then they went away from that. I guess the defense adjusted probably. So it was smart, but it's going to be a struggle for both teams to move the ball here. Ultimately, I don't trust the Steelers corners, and I do trust Nico Collins. Now, Collins may not have a massive game, and the Steelers have a really good pass rush, and I think they can really give fits to the Texans' offensive line and put a lot of pressure on C.J. Stroud. So I think it's going to be a real slog. But I think there's a slant or two in there. I think Nico Collins could catch you 7-8 passes. He could help you out enough. Little Dalton Schultz, obviously not much after the catch. I think the Texans have a little success on offense. I don't expect it to be consistent. And again, the run game, I don't think they can take advantage of the Pittsburgh defense. Pittsburgh's not going to be playing a 5-man defensive front against them like they did against the Ravens. That won't happen. They won't need to. they're going to be concerned about not getting beat through the air. So there's going to be a defensive battle. All that said, C.J. Stroud showed us last year in the playoffs. He's willing to run. Last year in both playoff games, 42 yards in each game. I think he pulls that out here if he needs to. And I think that's going to be a little bit of a bump for them. Other side of the ball, the Steelers. I don't know how they move the ball. I honestly don't know how they move the football. The run defense is excellent. Jalen Warren and Kenny Gainwell are fine. But I don't know that either has an advantage over the Houston defense. And even in the screen game where Kenny Gainwell's been eating, the Texans have been amazing at covering running backs out of the backfield. So I don't see a big advantage there at all. I think that's going to be a problem. And then offensively, they get DK Metcalf back from suspension. And I love Metcalf, but they haven't always used him well. The game against Baltimore a number of weeks back, I remember before the suspension, there were a couple go balls that Aaron Rodgers threw to DK Metcalf, and for whatever reason, the Ravens weren't planning for that. Team's been bracketing Metcalf, but I don't think the Texans need to do that. They got Kamari Lassiter, they got Derek Stingley. I think they're fine manning up, and I think the pressure is going to be a real problem for Aaron Rodgers. And if the run game doesn't get any legs, it's a bigger problem because what are they going to do? They're going to be in obvious passing situations with that pass rush and those corners. I just don't think Aaron Rodgers has much of a chance to move the ball. So ultimately, both defenses do well, but I think the Texans get more short fields than the Steelers do. And I think that becomes the end point. And so despite the Steelers' excellent pass rush, I think the Texans pull this out 19-13. So low-scoring game, 32. Over and under is 39.5, so I like the under. Texans are -3.5, so I like that number. So if you've heard me talk this through, you've heard me crazily take all of the lower seeds. I didn't plan that. I'm not a contrarian by nature, but styles make fights. And that was what my whole concern was about not wanting to predict a Super Bowl champion back in a month ago, back in early December. Now, how I did the whole bracket, I always run the whole bracket because I do these playoff challenges. And I had no intention, again, of thinking the Bills would make much noise. They're not great on the road. They're a bad defense. But when I broke the bracket down and I went game by game, Crazy Jim, yeah, had the Buffalo Bills advancing to the Super Bowl. And also, I had the Rams advancing. So, and then the way I did my bracket out, there actually was no team with 3 games. We'll talk about next week's breakdown every Wednesday. I'll be back on Wednesday. I'll break down next week's games. But I do have the Rams and I have the Bills playing for the Super Bowl. And I think the Rams do win that game. But that's where I have the final going. It's going to be a great weekend of football. Remember, SiriusXM, I'll be on Saturday, 2 to 5 Eastern. Now, I know the game starts at 4:30 Eastern, so I know won't catch you for that. But you're early part of the show, definitely jump on for that. Myself and Mario Puig will break those games down. Sunday, remember, after we get the 49ers-Eagles game, I will do a reactions on the first 4 playoff games. We'll get that one all set for you. And again, Wednesday, we'll be back every time through the playoffs. Everybody, I appreciate you. Thank you for hanging out with me. Hope everybody's off to a great start this new year. But I will be back soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Good luck in your betting endeavors or just enjoying a little NFL playoff football.